races this weekend. Here is Xavi Forés back on the Barney Ducati this weekend, still trying to put his name in the shop window to remain on that seat for next season. As you can see on your screen, we're just moments away now from opening pit lane again, so we'll get underway with the remaining half an hour of this free practice 2 session. But for Xavi Forés, very capable performer, a veteran really now at this stage of his career. He's been there and done it in terms of podiums and indeed with that team. He's got a very good case to be on that bike for next season.
Yeah, I think for Xavi, he knows that there's a good opportunity there, and he'll certainly think that this is probably that last roll of the dice to be in the World Championship. But for him, he's had a good relationship with Ducati over the years, raced for them in the Endurance World Championship this season, and looked very competitive. There was times where himself and Chaz Davis were partnered up, and they had a real chance of winning race. The Ball d'Or, they only lost outright at the end of that one. But certainly for Forés, this is where he wants to be. Well,
and as far as he is concerned, he will make his case on track, which is the best place that you can possibly do it. As far as Barney Ducati are concerned, it works out nicely for them either way, because they've got a chance at least to end the season with some strong results and prove to sponsors and to everyone here in the paddock that they can still run at the front, because it has been a pretty barren spell for Barney Ducati really since Xavi Forés moved on in terms of those front running results. So Xavi Forés up in 4th position in free practice 2 this afternoon as the clock starts counting down again, 31 minutes on it, and riders begin to emerge. Michael van der Mark onto track. Presumably some of them were still engaged in a little bit of a debrief after their initial forays out onto the circuit, because it's only 3 or 4 riders who have immediately taken advantage of the fact that we're green flag again.
Yeah, and certainly for Van der Mark, important to be able to go out there and get the miles, and certainly for David Clowers, important to be able to see some bikes out on track to be able to get the shots. And certainly for the likes of Van der Mark, this session is an important one for him, because last year here in Indonesia he looked quite strong in the BMW, and they've been able to make a lot of progress with that bike. They're another team that's going to be able to take advantage of the super concessions as well. They're going to make some changes to that bike over the winter to try and help the balance issues that they've had in a few tracks. The goal for that would be for BMW to be more competitive all the way around the season, same as it is for Honda, where instead of having some tracks that have been a bit of a weakness, maybe you're able to just get a bit closer to the pace everywhere we go through the season.
Yes, little to choose between those two manufacturers. Off the top of my head, I think it's just a few points between Honda and BMW in the Manufacturers' Championship. A little bit of pride there, less about wanting to be 4th and more about wanting to avoid 5th place and being the basement manufacturer for the wooden spoon. Not exactly an accolade that either is going to want this season.
Yeah, and I think this year's probably a little bit tough to call anyone with the wooden spoon, just because we've seen everyone make such a big step forward, and I think that's a good indication that the regulations from the FIM have really helped to find that stability all the way up and down the paddock. And we've had it where that 5th manufacturer has been able to, well, everyone's been on the podium, and we've had rounds where Scott Redding's been very consistent. For if you look at Donington and Most and a couple of other places, he's been very good. And Honda obviously had a podium with Lecuona and Assen after Razgatlioglu and Ray crashed. But even if that wasn't the case, it still would have been a 4th place finish for Lecuona. We've seen a lot of top 7s for them. So they've been there or thereabouts all the way through the season. And I think that gives you a lot of confidence that next season we're going to really be able to see all 5 manufacturers right at the front of the field a lot more often. And that's what you want to see. And certainly for World Wsbk, when we've got such a deep field of riders, it's always worth noting that we have a deep field of manufacturers as well.
Well, that's certainly what former Grand Prix men Iker Lecuona and Scott Redding want for their respective manufacturers, because it brings them back into play. Redding's proven that he can still do it when the bike permits, with those 3 podiums, as you mentioned, Donington Park, Most and Manicourt, the best weekends that he has had in 2022. And Lecuona it was who delivered that podium that you mentioned in Assen. Seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? April, the start of this season, Aragon and Assen, those opening 2 rounds, and getting another indication there of just what traffic looks like here in Mandalika.
Yeah, and you can see there for Van der Mark catches up on Kyle Smith. Obviously Kyle's first time out on a superbike was just this morning, so he's got a bit of ground to make up in the experience stakes, and Van der Mark crowding him out in the run down in towards turn 16 there.
And Smith, I think, is on his outlap as well, and Michael van der Mark on a flying lap. So van der Mark has come across the line a second slower than he'd gone previously in FP2. Carl Smith, in fact, is the only rider who hasn't improved his time this afternoon, as Bautista takes 9/10 out of his previous best in FP2, 1 minute 34.748. So a big improvement there from Alvaro Bautista, and that's the perfect opportunity to head down to pit lane with Anthony.
Thanks, Alex. I'm down here with Paolo Ciabatti, Ducati Sporting Director. Well, firstly, congratulations on everything last weekend. Phenomenal season, culminating in that clean sweep of titles with Pecco Bagnaia winning a Riders' title. We're facing a very similar situation this weekend with Alvaro, and very close to a dream week overall.
Yeah. Well, obviously, last Sunday we achieved a very important result, not only because he's the second Riders' title won by a Ducati rider, but because it's the first time in modern history that an Italian rider clinched the MotoGP championship on an Italian bike. You know, we have to go back to 50 years ago with Giacomo Agostini and Di Agusto, so it was an additional pride for us to have achieved this result after coming back from minus 291 until winning in Valencia. Now we're here, obviously. It's the first match point in a way for Alvaro here in the weekend in Mandalika. Let's see, obviously not for granted that he will manage, because still we know Toprak and Johnny are very strong, but there is a good chance to manage this advantage of 82 points. So let's see if we can finally also get back the World Superbike Riders title that we missed since 2011.
Even with that 82-point gap, it's slightly less nervous perhaps than last weekend, but even so important to win the title in style here in Mandalika. How have you seen the action so far with Alvaro and with Michael, his teammate near River?
Actually, they're doing pretty well. I think everybody is just trying to get used to the new surface. So I think in FP1 the grip was very low. Now it's a little bit better. There is more rubber. So the riders seem to enjoy. We also saw that in Supersport it's a Ducati 1-2-3 for the moment. So let's see. Obviously, first feedback is positive. There is no rain today, so let's hope we can have a dry race also tomorrow and on Sunday.
I'll echo those thoughts. Best of luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Word on the weather, the schedule trying to facilitate the best possible window to avoid wet weather. We do know that mid-afternoons, around about 4 o'clock here, well, we've had some form of wet weather around about that time pretty much every day since we arrived.
Yeah, not sure if the Shaman's on call for the weekend, like at the MotoGP race, but
fantastic.
Certainly for Ducati, they want a clean weekend, a dry weekend where some of the variables are taken out of the equation. You want to make sure that you're able to get as many points as possible. Good to see Paolo Ciabatti here, and Gigi Dall'Igna as well. We've seen in the pit box a few times on the shots already through the course of this. That shows just how important this weekend is for Ducati. They want to get this championship decided and then move on to the final round of the year. And I think that's one of the big things for teams and riders. They want to just get the boxes ticked as quickly as possible.
As far as the Shaman's concerned, all I can say is that they got a race. So clearly, that is the only reason that they were able to go racing, and we should therefore have that person present for every single round during the season. Jonathan Rea would rather they're not present, I suspect, because wet weather is the best chance that he or Toprak Razgatlioglu would probably have to take major points out of Alvaro Bautista.
Yeah, and Jonathan Rea was asked about the championship chances that he has, and he said, look, it's literally a mathematical thing. I've got no chance for the championship. I'm focusing on trying to win another race, because it has been a barren spell for him all the way back to Estoril at the start of the season for Jonathan to win his last race. And for a rider that's had so much success, it's you wouldn't have believed that would have been the case at the start of the season.
No, and of course a winless run for Jonathan Rea, that's the longest of any during his Kawasaki career, but it's also the longest run that Kawasaki have had without a win in more than a decade. So it's just as galling for the Green Machine as it is for Jonathan Rea himself.
Yeah, because I think it's very easy to forget just how, for years, Kawasaki was the reference, has been the reference, the team, the bike, the riders. But the game moves on, and you take things for granted in racing, and certainly Kawa's success for such a prolonged period was something that was very special. You look at the 3 years where Tom Sykes was really competitive, could have won the championship each year. Ray comes in, wins 6 in a row. We've never seen something like that, and certainly from what we've had over the last few years, it just shows how quickly things can turn, and you go from being that reference point to suddenly doing the chasing, and they're doing so much chasing right now, and unfortunately for them, until you're really able to make a big